That whole mess at the Crystal Alner Hotel started like one of those moments you can feel coming apart before anyone says a word. $1 billion deal between a British delegation and Sheikh Zayed Al Falhan, an oil magnate whose watch probably costs more than the chandelier above him, was disintegrating in real time. His voice, deep and sharp, cut through the air in Arabic, his tone pure insult. And before anyone could figure out what was said, he was halfway to the door, his assistant scrambling to keep up. The Brits were pale, flustered, their interpreters still fumbling with his glasses. Having just mistranslated a financial guarantee into something that made Zaid think they saw him as a street corner vendor. And that's when Madison Carter, 26, hair in a simple ponytail, plain hotel uniform, no makeup, stopped mopping, leaned the handle against the wall, and stepped forward. In flawless Gulf-accented Arabic, she bowed slightly and said, "Forgive them. Your Excellency," they meant fair partnership. The room froze. Zaid turned, his gaze sharp as a hawk, testing her. "You speak my language?" he asked. "I lived in Oman for 8 years," she replied. Steady as stone. You could feel the recalculations ripple through the room. No one expected the housekeeper to rescue a billion-dollar negotiation. But not everyone liked it. "Claire," one of the British team, whispered just loud enough. "Who let the cleaning lady in?" Laughter spread, low and mean. Madison didn't bite. She just stood straighter. Even when Paul, the hotel manager, marched in and hissed that she had no right to interfere, she bowed slightly and walked out without a word, leaving her mop like a witness to the whole thing. A parting shot from Zaid's young assistant. "You're leaving already?" "The room's not clean, got only a quiet. Even cleanliness starts with respect." That shut him up. She took her share of jabs in the corridors too, kitchen staff tossing dish rags at her, guests in furs and champagne sneering that she should stick to the mop. Her answers were always calm, almost gentle, but sharp enough to draw blood. "A mop cleans floors," she told one man. "What cleans arrogance?" And yet, back in the meeting, Zaid stalled the talks just long enough to say, "Let her sit, she will translate." Paul sputtered, but no one argued with the sheik. Madison came back, notebook in hand, and turned the tide, every phrase precise, every nuance intact. Claire tried again during a break, sugar-poisoned smile suggesting Madison was out of her depth. "Depth isn't measured by titles," was all Madison said, and that was that. By the end, the room was hers. But Paul wasn't finished. He cornered her in the lobby, accusing her of shaming the hotel. Madison simply removed her name tag, set it on the counter, and walked out. Hours later, a sealed note from Zaid's office landed on Paul's desk. "Send her to me." She arrived at the penthouse expecting trouble. Instead, Zaid slid a box across the table. Inside, an official invitation to join the language advisory panel for the Abu Dhabi Energy Summit. "You understood intent," he said. "Most advisors can't manage that after 10 years. His assistant muttered it was a fluke. Madison didn't flinch. Help builds empires. "What do you build?" Her arrival at the summit drew its own chorus of snide remarks. A journalist asking how she'd charmed her way there. Hotel staff back home gossiping about a wink that changed her life. Tabloids painting her as a lucky maid. Madison ignored it all. Her first press conference opened in classical Arabic so flawless it brought an elderly professor to his feet in applause. Headlines shifted. Gulf linguistic specialist. Invitations piled up. Back at the Crystal Alner, karma worked quietly. Paul was replaced without ceremony. A gossiping clerk lost her sponsorship after her comments surfaced online. The British team's reputation took a public beating. Madison didn't gloat. She just kept her notebook close, her pen moving. Even on a flight home to see family, when relatives muttered about her lucky break, she smiled, kept studying, spoke kindly to a child across the aisle in Arabic, making his mother's eyes well up. By the OPEC summit, she wasn't the housekeeper in the corner. She was the one at the head of the table, the room shifting when she walked in. Old skeptics now avoided her gaze. New ones tried their luck. A junior diplomat suggesting she was just there for photo ops, an executive dismissing her rise as a fairy tale. Her answers were the same measured steel. Photos fade. Words last. Fairy tales end. Work doesn't. Then Reuters dropped the story. Zaid publicly crediting Madison as his senior advisor and the reason he was investing $2 billion in the U.S. The investors came calling. The world's view had shifted, not because she shouted for it, but because she kept showing up, listening, translating, not just words, but intent. The people who mocked her were still talking, trying to write her off. She didn't need to answer, because the truth was standing there, notebook in hand, already moving toward the next summit, the next language, the next room full of people who didn't yet realize who they were dealing with. And for anyone who's been looked down on, written off, or made to feel small, you weren't wrong. And you weren't invisible. You were seen. You still are. Where do you stand on it? Was Madison right to step in that day, or should she have stayed in her lane? Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk about what respect, skill, and courage really look like when no one's expecting it. Be why the time Madison's name hit the front pages. The phone on her desk at the Abu Dhabi Summit office wouldn't stop ringing. Ministers wanted meetings, CEOs wanted her on panels. Universities invited her to speak about linguistic diplomacy, a term she didn't even know existed before someone attached it to her. The funny thing? She still lived in the same one-bedroom apartment above a bakery, still bought her tea from the tiny shop around the corner where the owner never remembered her name. She liked it that way. It kept her grounded, away from the whirlpool of people now trying to claim they knew her back when. But fame, even the quiet, reluctant kind, attracts shadows. 2 weeks before the next round of OPEC talks, she received a discreet message requesting a private language consultation at a waterfront hotel in Doha. The sender claimed to be from the Moroccan energy delegation. It didn't smell right, but she went, not out of naivety, but because sometimes the only way to understand the game is to walk onto the board. The suite was too large, too cold. Inside waited 3 men in tailored suits, none Moroccan. The oldest, with a Turkish accent and a silver signet ring, smiled without warmth. "We know you're the reason Zaid signed," he said, "and the reason the British team lost billions. That makes you influential." He slid a document across the table, an agreement written in Arabic but layered with intentional ambiguities, clauses that could bankrupt a small country. "Convince Zaid to sign this," the man said, "and there's a figure with 6 zeros waiting for you." Madison didn't touch the paper. "Influence," she said slowly, "isn't for sale." The younger man beside him leaned forward, his tone colder. "Then maybe the next headline is about how the maid who played diplomat got caught fabricating translations. It was a bluff, and she knew it, but a dangerous one." She stood, her notebook still closed. "If you thought I'd sell my work," she said, "you didn't understand a single word I've ever spoken." She left without looking back, though she could feel their eyes like knives between her shoulders. 2 days later, the story broke anyway, a slick online investigation claiming Madison had altered Zaid's words during that first meeting at the Crystal Alner. Anonymous sources claimed she'd inserted phrases to flatter him, to tilt the deal. The comments section was brutal: liar, manipulator, political plant. The kind of rumor that can stain you permanently if you're in the wrong line of work, and hers was nothing but language and trust. When she walked into the pre-summit reception that night, the air shifted. Conversations quieted, eyes lingered longer than polite. Claire was there. Yes, the same Claire from the British team, smiling too sweetly as she approached. "Quite the storm you've stirred up," she said, swirling her wine. "I'd say I'm surprised, but I'm not." Madison met her gaze. "No," she said softly. "You never were good at hiding intent." She moved on before Claire could answer. It wasn't until midway through the reception that Madison realized Zaid hadn't arrived. His assistant, not the smug watch checker, but an older man with a calm presence, approached her quietly. "He's holding off," the man said. "Not because he doubts you, because he wants to see how you walk through fire." So she did. The next morning, Madison requested to address the assembled delegations before the talks began. No notes, no slides. She simply stood and, in 3 languages, recounted the exact terms of that original Dubai negotiation, down to the pauses, the tonal shifts, the diplomatic concessions both sides made. Then she invited anyone present, anyone at all, to challenge her recollection against the official minutes. Silence. Not the polite kind, but the heavy, suffocating kind when you've just watched someone dismantle a lie in real time. By the end of the day, the investigation had been quietly retracted, the site issuing a vague note about unverified sources. No apology, but she didn't need one. The people who mattered had seen what they needed to see. That night, Zaid finally appeared, standing beside her at the balcony overlooking the city. "You didn't just walk through fire," he said. "You made them walk with you." He didn't smile, but his tone held approval, which from Zaid was worth more than a standing ovation. Still, the battle had changed her. She began keeping 2 notebooks now, one for languages, one for people. Not their names, but their tells. The little verbal habits that revealed more than any dossier. Because Madison had learned something most in her position never admit. It's not enough to translate words. You have to translate motives. Her chance to use that skill came sooner than expected. Midway through the OPEC sessions, a minor delegate from a West African nation requested her help during a side negotiation. His team was being cornered into an energy contract that would bleed their country dry. Madison sat in, listening quietly as the opposing side spoke French laced with idioms meant to obscure hidden penalties. She didn't interrupt. She waited until the final clause was read, then repeated it back in crystal-clear French stripped of every euphemism. The delegate's eyes widened. He refused to sign. The other side walked out, furious. Word of that little intervention spread faster than she wanted. By the closing dinner, 3 different delegations had quietly asked if she'd consider private advisory roles. The offers weren't small, but Madison had no interest in becoming a hired gun. She'd already seen what people would do to someone who owed loyalty to no flag. At the farewell reception, Simon, the British lead from that first Dubai meeting, found her at the edge of the crowd. He looked older now, wearier. "You cost me my career," he said, but there was no bite to it. "And yet, watching you work this week, I can't even be angry." He raised his glass slightly. "You were right to step in." Madison didn't toast back, just gave a small nod. "It was never about being right," she said. "It was about not letting something wrong stand." When she returned to Abu Dhabi, the bakery owner downstairs finally remembered her name. Not because of the headlines, he'd never read them, but because she'd been buying tea there for years. She smiled at that. In a world where power shifts with the wind, there was something grounding about being known for the smallest, simplest things. And yet, the shadow from Doha lingered in her mind. Someone had tried to buy her voice. That meant they'd try again. She didn't know when, or where, or in what language the next offer would come. But she knew this. The answer would always be the same. "So tell me, if you were Madison, would you have walked into that suite in Doha at all? Or would you have stayed away, knowing the game before it started?" Drop your thoughts below, because sometimes the line between courage and recklessness is only clear in hindsight.